So behind the scenes just ended. Randy, that means straighten up. Okay.
All right. I'm good.
So, hey, everybody, I'm Teddy Burriss. I work for a company called Burriss Consulting. We're social media strategists, LinkedIn trainers, coaches. And every week I show up now twice a week. I show up with my good buddy, Mr. Randy Wooden, and we play and we have fun and we bring really smart people to the conversation. So, hey, Randy, would you introduce yourself to my friends?
Yeah. And while I'm doing that, if you're watching us, let us know in the chat box. Teddy's going to keep an eye on that, but let us know where you are watching us from. So yeah, Randy Wooden. I'm the director for the Professional Center by Goodwill here in sunny, warm, beautiful Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We made it through the ice storm that really wasn't. And now we get to reap the benefits. I'll tell you what, we are sitting on some beautiful weather today, folks. And if you're out and about, enjoy it because it won't last, as is always the case. But yeah, I run our professional center. We help, and we're free, but we help job hunters who are typically degreed, maybe have owned a company. They're in a salaried role. They could be fresh out of school. They could be Teddy's age, all ages, industries. Teddy and I are the same age. We're like this close.
That's right. So Randy just turned 56 as well.
I thought it was 52.
Well, I don't count those other 7 years.
Okay. Also, our clients might be a target, if you will, for David Burden, our guest today. He's an executive recruiter. We're going to talk a little more detail. I'll have David talk about himself briefly, and then we've got some topics to cover. But yeah, our professional center, like I said, we're free. Happy to help. Find me on LinkedIn. We work by appointment. It's all virtual now these days. So we do a lot of LinkedIn training, just a number of things to try to help equip folks to do a better job of the job hunt. We're going to talk executive search. Yeah, what you got, Teddy?
We got people from Waco, Texas, man, Thomasville, North Carolina, Atlanta, which I think is Georgia. We got people from Charlotte, North by God, Carolina, man. They're coming in all over the place. We lost our buddy from Italy, man. I need to find him back,
Yeah, didn't we have somebody from Mexico? Was it Mexico or I know Canada was one time. Yeah. I don't see.
Yeah. Come on, anyway. Folks, jump in here. Put your burger down for a minute and tell us where you're at.
We're at 36,000 people right now. But right. Yeah, some of the topics we're going to cover, and we definitely want you to chat in some questions, especially if you've had or wonder about what is life like on that other side of the desk for an executive recruiter. We're going to touch, before I introduce David, we're going to hit on some topics just to kind of whet your appetite a little bit. Executive search versus staffing firm. They both have roles to fill. They sometimes overlap. But again, how do they typically differ? And David being on that executive search side, what does the process look like? How do they surface candidates? What happens if you get a call? What should you do when you get a call from an executive recruiter? What about internal recruiters working for, let's say, a large company versus third party? David being a third party recruiter. And also, who pays? How does a recruiter make their money? And how do you find the right recruiters out there? And this is not a commercial for David and his firm, but more to help you get a good sense for how do you navigate. There are a gazillion recruiters out there. How do you navigate to try to find the ones that are most likely to be of mutual benefit?
Hey, and we'll Randy, how many recruiters are out there?
Gazillions of them.
A lot of people.
So anyway, but yeah, go ahead, David. You know yourself better than I do. Go ahead and fill the folks in on you and sort of what you get involved with over there at the Newell Group.
Hey, everybody. I'm David Burden. My real title is Director of Nonprofit People Solutions, but I'm an executive recruiter for nonprofits. So I help organizations like Goodwill, food banks, community organizations with leadership searches. And so that's kind of my specialty.
Okay. So you got that. Now, Teddy, do you have anything on in the chat box?
So look, folks, we want to make this engaging. We want to answer the questions that you have. So please, as you're listening to David and Randy engage, drop any questions you have in the chat box. I'm not like Randy. You can do it in the Q&A, but I'm not going to pay as much attention as I will to the chat box. So drop questions in the chat so we can help you with ideas that are in your mind. Randy, back to you, buddy.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. And David, you're kind of a kindred spirit here for me. You haven't been doing this your entire life, and I hadn't been a recruiter my entire life.
Yeah.
But as I transitioned from radio, that's the role that I took on, was that of an executive recruiter. And so again, this is back. So if I drift into the Springsteen glory days kind of routine here, but this was before email, this was before computers, before the internet. It was just smile and dial and a lot of handwritten notes. That's why Teddy, that's why I still do this stuff, because it's,
I tell you, Randy, but
makes you remember things.
I put it, I do it on this, man. It all goes in this thing, whatever this thing is.
There you go. All right, so let's start. I always ask the why question first of all. That's just something. David, you're doing what you do. Why did you go down that path? What was it? A single instance? Was it a series of events that sort of pointed you that said, "Hey, this is my passion, and this is where I need to be"?
It was kind of a series of events, as you pointed out. You know, this is a second act for me. I spent a lot of my career in higher ed, studied history, but what do I like about this? What is I really like digging to understand a situation. I like to take input and information from multiple sources, and I like to synthesize that into an outcome that benefits my listener, my reader, or my client. And in a real thumbnail, one for all the liberal arts people out there, that's an apology for the liberal arts. You can do exactly. It's not what can you do with the liberal arts, it's what can't you do. But that's also what executive search is it really is a research and communications project that leads to an end. And partly just because of my nature and my training, I'm really good at the digging part of that. That's really important to find the right people and to make the connection that's going to make my client happy and my candidate happy. And until those two are not happy, I'm not happy.
Yeah, it is a sales process. It's a sales process, but it's also problem solving and just a lot of the same skills that every other person does in their job. You do the same. But people wonder, I think there's some terminology I guess I'd like to throw out there so that people understand, what terms mean. And one being executive search versus staffing firms. Help people try to get a sense, at least from your perspective anyway, of how they differ and or complement each other.
Yeah, so my firm is in the executive search space, and that generally translates into, if you want to put it by titles, director, manager. So what I know my colleagues are working on right now. Could be directors of operation, manufacturer directors of safety, VP of sales, VP of category management. So we're in that space, and we don't do a whole lot with, say, we need somebody to work on an assembly line or hourly workers. And I say this, I worked my way through graduate school as a nurse's aide. And so I worked exclusively through an agency, and there was a great, and I went through long enough that we were all just called agency girls. I've worked on, on the sort of staffing agency side, and that's a really important part of the puzzle. But it's simply, we work in this lane a whole lot more, and that's where our expertise, and that's where our connections are.
Yeah, I get that too, and that certainly makes sense. So let's throw another couple of terms out here. We hear the word retain search, and we hear contingency. I think we also hear contract hire. We hear temp to perm, temp to hire, and there's some misnomers out there. And to the degree that you're comfortable anyway, let's speak to the retain versus contingency from your perspective.
Yeah, and so honestly, this is really a much more of a conversation between the client and the recruiting firm. Really, to you as a candidate, it's not going to make a ton of difference. But a retained search is where The client has agreed to pay a certain amount up front. Traditionally, it had been a third up front, a third upon the presentation of a list of candidates, and a third upon the completion of the search. Though you can negotiate that, but that's kind of the breakdown. Contingent is simply the client agrees to allow me to work the search, gives me input, feedback, gives me the information to help them find the right people, and my fee is payable upon placement. So that's, as a candidate, the process really would look very much the same for you, but that's part of it. And then, contract staffing, that used to be, people used to say, oh, that's only hourly, but there are some now where people are hiring, say, project managers, and IT does this a lot. And so you may agree to work at an organization, but basically, be put through, my company's sort of back office and payroll. So the company's paying me as a vendor, and my back office is paying you as a contract employee. And and some of those can be very, these can be six-figure placements. So that's that's not quite the hard line that it used to be.
Sure.
Now, in nonprofit, there's a little less of that, but it's my colleagues that are doing, say, food manufacturing, some other roles, that and IT, you are going to see that a little bit more. And some candidates actually prefer that.
Yeah, and I've had several clients like that, and I think, Teddy, you've run across folks that say, hey, I can make more hourly, and you know what, I get to come in and do my thing, and I don't have to stick around to clean it all up afterward. I can boogie on out onto my next project. And let me ask you this, though, when it comes to contingency, by the very nature of that, it basically it's saying to me, okay, David, we will allow your firm to work on it, but we'll also allow other firms to work on this so that we can get a more cast a wider net, and whoever happens to get the winning lottery ticket, they get the commission, and the other ones basically work for nothing. A little bit like with real estate. If you're representing the buyer, maybe another buyer buys the house, and so you spent the time showing the home to, you know what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
How does that work for contingency? Are you the only game in town, or are you one of several firms that they're employing here?
I asked my client to be, upfront with me. How is this working? I would advise that you not have a ton, not just because I'm trying to funnel it through me, but what you're going to find is if you have 5 recruiters working a role, they're going to end up stepping all over themselves. You're going to hear, even if you're not using the organization's name, they're going to hear 5 people calling in basically looking for the same thing.
Yeah.
And that doesn't always communicate strength, efficiency, to your potential employees. So it really actually creates a headache for the client because at that point they're kind of managing 5 searches. If you kind of think you've got 5 project managers calling in on the same project who are duplicating one another's efforts. So what I would suggest to the client would be find the one that you think has the best runway, that has the connections, that kind of sound like they know what they're doing on this, and give it to them for an exclusive period. And that's kind of what I request. I say, could I have exclusivity on this for 6 weeks? And at that point, if I'm not at least giving you people you want to talk to at that point, you should find somebody else.
That makes sense. Teddy? Yeah.
Let me grab a question. And I thought about this, and then our buddy Galaxy A6, one day, Randy, we're going to discover who is this mystical person behind Galaxy A6. They show up every week. They love us, and we love that they show up. But they're very mystical, and I'm okay with that.
I know who it is, but I cannot divulge under the veil of secrecy. But I do know who this individual is.
Oh, okay. Can you tell me?
I really do. I do.
Okay. Well, good. Hey, so anyway, Galaxy asked this question to David. And they wrote this: COVID-19 rules aside, and I don't know that you can do that, but with the COVID experience we're having now, do you recommend that job seekers meet with their recruiters if they're local?
You can if you wish. As I said, I mostly recruit sort of outside of my own zip code. So I don't think that's essential. One of the things that I'd suggest, I actually have a blog piece coming out probably next week about how to find the right recruiter for you as a candidate. And really, I think you just need to find somebody that you're comfortable with and that you believe knows your space. And honestly, it just may be difficult to set up a coffee meeting with every candidate that a recruiter is working with.
It can be a challenge. And going back to what you had said earlier regarding the contingency piece and asking for that period of exclusivity, I think that's a really nice bargaining chip for you to have out there. And I'll tell you, from back in the day when we would work some contingency searches, if we found there were 5 or 6 other firms that they were using, we'd say, hey, you know what, knock yourself out, because they're not all slugs. And, if I'm going to devote my time essentially in a commission only environment here where I only make money if I have the winning guy or gal, and I'm competing with 5 or 6 other firms banging around for the same people, what are the odds that I'm going to get that winning ticket versus I can work a search that I have a greater likelihood of producing revenue?
Absolutely.
So again, if you're an employer out there and you think, it makes sense, let me throw this out to 10 or 15 different search firms and boy, we'll fill this thing overnight. Beware of that. Teddy, what you get? Any more going on in the chat box?
Nothing ever happens on my street, but 3 fire trucks just went down my street.
Feel free to turn your camera around so we can all see.
I don't smell like smoke. Hey, here's another one for you, David. Steve threw this out. Todd, I'm not on fire, Todd. Steve says, and I like this, is a good question. If the recruiter feels you're good, if they feel that you're a good fit for this, but they have fears that your presentation via your resume is not quite up to speed. And Steve, I'm paraphrasing. Are they likely to help you sharpen your resume up? Are they likely to give you guidance on improving your presence?
Yeah, and it kind of gets back to what Randy was talking about, that we're going to work where we believe we're going to make a little bit of money on that. So if I find somebody who's got great experience and a good resume, I'm not going to rewrite the resume, but I'm going to talk through that. And so, for example, you'll get my organization's website at the end of this, but we've got a lot of blog things I'm referring to. And I wrote a blog piece on development, fundraising individuals. And what really just struck me when I was networking with some people was, I said, what did you do? How did you raise money? And they said, I raised $10 million to build a new center and this, and I said, I'd love to present you on this role. And I got a resume that said, I was responsible for fundraising from this date to this date. I'm not turning that in. It's not going to make me look good, and you're not going to get an interview with that. But what I will do, I'm not going to make a huge project out of it, but I am going to suggest, let's highlight your experience that's relevant to this role, and we may talk that through. Now, there are times that you may want to invest in a resume writer, resume service. Those are technical writers. That's hard work. And I also have a blog on that, just in terms of questions you might want to ask on that. So yes, we will put you in the best presentation we can. No, we're not going to completely repackage you.
Yeah, and I would wager that you look at the LinkedIn profiles as well to make sure that, if you're trying to hire a cat wrestler, you don't have their profile's not all about being a barista.
Yeah.
Teddy was a cat wrestler in a prior life, but he'd like to go back to that. He would, but he's just, he's just waiting for the right opportunity. So,
hey, Randy, I got another question for David who came up.
This is good. Yeah, please fire away.
And anybody on here, we've got 43,000 people paying attention today, and that doesn't even count what's on Facebook and LinkedIn and, looking through the walls and the cracks in the wall. If you have any question, feel free to, Randy, there's people behind your curtain. Drop your questions in the chat and I'll be glad to share them with David. David, as an executive search, this is from Tracy. As an executive search recruiter, do you have a Rolodex? Do you have a big bucket of business cards that you root into to find the person you're looking for? Or are you always looking for new candidates?
I don't have a Rolodex. We do have, sorry. We have, so recruiter speak, we have an ATS, applicant tracking system. It's basically a database. And so, but what I refer to that that's my relationship file. So yes, I have that, but Tracy, I'm always adding to it. And so sometimes I connect with somebody that I present them for a role and, they were a great match, but somebody was just a little bit better. And I want to maintain that relationship. And so, hey, I've already got your resume on file. If you see an opportunity, let me know. I can help you with that. But also, I'm going to keep you in mind for future opportunities. But at the same time, when a client says, I'm recruiting, I want you to go out and recruit for this role in this area, I'm going to do my research through, some of it's through LinkedIn, some of it's through, some other databases that, I have access as a recruiter that the general public would never bother with. So I'm always digging, but at the same time, if I've already got a good relationship, I'm happy to work with that as well.
Are you using the same FBI database that I got the password to from Randy?
Oh, yeah. This is kind of like sharing the Netflix password.
Yeah. Hey, here's another one that just came up. I got one more. We'll go back to the conversation. Steve asked, how can the candidates, how can the people, help to maintain that relationship so that you and them are aware of each other?
Yeah, that's a good question. So part of it is, one, I don't want you to think all I do is spend time on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is important, and I know Teddy does a lot with that. But I do pay attention to that. And so if you look at my LinkedIn feed, you'll see that I'm trying to do some things to add value to your day. And it's not always just flat out, here's my business card, call me, but it might be, here's an interesting article that if you're in my space, you want to look at, here's something that I've written. And, at the same time, the nonprofit people that I follow on LinkedIn, here's something really neat that my organization just did. Here's an achievement. And at the same thing, it kind of shows me that if you're posting an article that you've read or that you've written, it shows that you're interested in maintaining professional knowledge. And so a lot of that, I'm seeing, and that's keeping that relationship going, even though we're not necessarily on the phone all the time. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, and we've kind of danced around in bits and pieces, and that's cool because we want to make this relevant for those that are watching. I see Donald is put in a question. I know we want to get to that. That's the, hey, I'm overqualified, but I can take a lower position. And how does the recruiter help me with that? So we'll get to that in a little bit. But we've kind of hopscotched around the broader topic of what does your day in the life look like? What is this executive search process? So I assume you smile and dial, and you've got existing companies that have needs, or you see they run an ad on Ladders or somewhere, and you call them, or how do you first of all, how do you get the job order, and then how do you go about surfacing the candidates?
Yeah, so a lot of it is back to the digging that we talked about before. Yeah. I want to find organizations that are in my space. So again, that's nonprofit. And then within that, because that's a pretty broad field, within that I have some subspecialties. So one thing that is really, I'm passionate about it is workforce development. And that's how I connected with Randy. And that's a lot of what Goodwill does. And the thing I like about workforce development and placing professionals in that is that it's not a degree, it's not a certification. And in fact, it's not something that I can just go into a database and enter 3 magic words or a degree and find the right candidate. But it's a set of very specific experiences and dispositions that makes the right person kind of hard to find. So I kind of like that challenge, and I also like the people in that space. So part of it is I may not necessarily be calling in saying, can you give me a job order right now? But you're in the workforce development space. I'd like to get to know you. I'd like to be a resource for you in the future. And that may end up being that you call me and say, hey, I'm thinking about making a career move. And, and so I may help you that way. Or yeah, we're thinking about adding on, 2 more directors. Can you help us out with that? So very rarely do I call in and say, hey, could I search for you? And that afternoon.
Yeah. Okay. So you get the job order. Great. All right. So we've got a few minutes, and then we'll hit the half past hour, Teddy. All right. So now you got the specs of what you need to go find. You have your shopping list, your scavenger hunt list of stuff.
Yeah.
We can get into the weeds in terms of how much weight you put on assessments and that kind of a thing to try to find the right, not just the accomplishments, but the right character, right personality, and so forth. But how do you go about finding the people? You've got a database, but like you said, you key in a few keywords, you may not find the right person. So how do you go out and identify what you believe to be the closer fits?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of that is, I network every day. So whether that's, to find job leads or whether that's to find candidates. And so that's, so we're not starting from scratch. But what I would know from networking is these are the leading organizations in that field. So, if it's workforce development, obviously Goodwill is, there are a lot of people with those credentials, but, there are some other big organizations and even smaller organizations that are high achieving in a local area. And so I'm going to kind of reach out to those people and say, hey, Randy, I see you're with a leading organization. I'd like to visit with you about this opportunity. And I'm not trying to pull you away from your job, but I just say, here's what I'm working on. And, you may say, hey, I'd like to find out about this myself, or I know of someone who may be open about that. So it's networking, but it's pretty informed networking. I'm targeting who I'm having my conversations with. And one thing that, my boss always says is, a good recruiter can talk somebody into taking a job, but a great recruiter won't try. So, I'm never going to, people talk about recruiters stealing somebody. I'm never going to steal somebody from an organization. But I want them to, but they may be open to that opportunity, and I want them to be happy with it.
Yeah, basically you're reading an ad to them that if in the perception, at least back in the day, again, this is before the internet and before anybody with a computer could apply for any job in the world. But the perception, if they're paying a search firm, especially if they're retaining a search firm to go out and find that ideal person, typically it's the person who's not aggressively out there looking for something. It's that the perception is we want to hire somebody who is happy, productive. I mean, let's face it, everybody is open to a discussion pretty much. Yeah. Now, they may say, I'm not really interested. I can't relocate. I love what I'm doing. I'm up for promotion. But at least they'll listen to you. And probably to your point, David, they'll say, hey, I know this guy named Burriss. He's a great guy. He's fooled me so far. So I think he's a pretty good guy, and you may want to talk to him. So yeah, you're paid to find that needle in a haystack. And so the process is interesting, and the depth of investigating that you do is interesting. I know we're at half past the hour. Teddy, I'm going to throw it to you. And then Teddy, if you've got a question or two from the chat box, take her from there. You may want to flip your... I
want to just remind you, not everybody's open to a conversation. My second wife did not want to talk with me yet. So anyway, hey, it's...
Talk to me. Fine. She was fine talking to me, Teddy. I don't know.
Hey, it's 12:30. I'm Teddy Burriss and my good buddy, Randy Wood. And our special guest today is Dave Burden from the Newell Group. The conversation is all about retained search, executive search, contingent search, and, how can job seekers best get the value that's out there through these groups of people. So Dave, thanks for showing up and joining in. So, hey, Randy, you want to go? I'm gonna go ahead and get Donald's question.
Yeah,
Donald wants to know, David, this, how do you approach the issue when you have a candidate who appears to be overqualified, like Teddy Burriss, okay? But they may be underemployed because they're not doing what they really could be doing, but they're interested in this job opportunity and they're willing to change their role. How do you deal with that overqualified, but they'd be happy doing something a little bit less stringent?
Yeah. And I think this kind of gets back to the type of candidate that Randy was talking about before the break. And we call those passive candidates.
Yeah.
And so, look, if you're looking to hire, you may put out an ad, hey, help wanted, and name the role. And sometimes when I call into a client, they'll say, or a potential client, they'll say, well, we don't need help. We've got 500 applications. And I truly believe they do. But the different question is, and how many of them, read the ad? But good people apply and are hired directly. That happens. But what happens a lot of times though is we need this unique set of skills. We need this background. And in a lot of cases, the person who has that is too busy being a rock star in their current job to hunt for a position. And so they're not actively looking. And so that's where we might call in and somebody says, geez, I never considered moving to San Diego, but here's I really want to take a look at this role. I'd like to learn more about it. And the other thing for clients to understand is that the candidate is interviewing the client. And so if I call in, to Randy, you may say, look, if you take a call with me and you have a conversation with me, you're not agreeing to quit your job. You're not agreeing to take whatever. You're just agreeing to have a conversation. So think of it as kind of meeting for coffee. And so would you like to meet with somebody from this company and learn a little bit more about the opportunity? But to the point of what if I'm overqualified?
Yeah.
So again, that's kind of the benefit of working with an executive recruiter, is that we're working with the hiring authority, and we've had some good conversations with them, and we have that relationship. And if there is a match in this one, we would talk to the candidate, and honestly, I would really grill the candidate. Look, here are the objections they're going to be raised. Why, if you've got this experience, why do you want to perform at a level that your resume says, you're past that, or something like that. And there may be some really good reasons, personal reasons. And that's where I can then come to the client and say, look, I want to talk to you about Teddy, and before you hang up on me, here's the setup. Here's why this is a match, and here's why this is worth a second look. Mm-hmm. And so, for example, I was in higher ed, and so if in that career you move around a lot, and so my wife's resume has a lot of short tenures on it, and that immediately is a red flag. But, if you're reading this at kind of an entry level, in a search screen, but if you can get to the point of, well, what's going on? Well, husband moved for school, husband moved for work, husband moved for, and that's kind of the nature of this. Like, oh, this makes sense. So there are ways to sort of talk through that. We're never going to be able to put a square peg in a round hole, but we are able to present the whole person. And so I don't send a resume. I call and say, I want to talk to you about Teddy's accomplishments and why I believe he's a fit. And then I'm going to send the resume, the contact info, and get the call scheduled.
And let me piggyback on that too. I mean, David, you're in this thing to solve problems. A company's mm-hmm. got an issue, candidate has thorn in the paw they need to relieve or whatever. Mm-hmm. But and to the people who may be thinking, well, the recruiter's just going to throw a bunch of stuff at the wall, and somebody's overqualified, underqualified, just throw it all against the wall in the hopes that the employer will hire one of them. Good luck. Because guess what? When old Burden over there throws a bunch of crap against the wall, the company's going to go, I don't have time for this dude. And how many more searches is David Burden going to be allowed to work on?
Exactly.
So critical for you to position these folks, and your job as a salesperson, and say, look, again, before you hang up, here's why I like this guy. And here's why I think you're going to like him, because I've talked to him and there's a story behind it. Yeah. So your reputation rides along with the job hunters as well. And so again, you got to kind of guard that. And so I really can appreciate where you're coming from on that. We've dealt with, and I love the phrase square peg, round hole, because we are for putting round pegs in round holes. That's why we're getting money to do this. Mm-hmm. When you really get down to it. And so if somebody's a square peg kind of thing, then it's like, well, okay, but show me the why I should care when I've got these round pegs on paper over here. Mm-hmm. But again, it goes to you and the relationship that you have with the employer. They know, like, and trust you. You have a track record. You're not going to waste their time and yours, nor the candidates. And so once that trust level is established, I think you can help put that square peg in the round hole, kind of, sort of. Maybe it's a rounded square, kind of the edges around it a little bit.
File off the edges. Yeah. Hey, I'm gonna get Mysterious Galaxy, who is he's showing his true self to me. I'm getting words. He's telling me who he is. I'm not quite certain, but I'm getting close. But before I go to Galaxy's question, Dave, I'll support what you said. When I did staffing, I used to do staffing years ago. I always presented 3 candidates, and I never called them good, better, best. I said, here's 3 candidates that I think align with your needs. And often my client would go, which is the best? All 3 of them are good. I might think 1 or 2 are better than the other. You may think something different. So I'm not going to rate them. Mm-hmm. And in the early days, they didn't like I did that. But then they started realizing that, it wasn't my job to tell you which one you would like the best. There's 3 that I know can do the work. So
yeah, and several times, there might be 3 must-haves on the role. And so what I would say is, candidate A, if you're going to put the emphasis on this part, they've got deeper experience. Candidate B has had longer tenure in a similar organization, and really then that helps me, instead of me telling them which one's better. The feedback I get from the client is going to help me know. Let's say if none of these end up working out, we want to move more in the direction of candidate C because they checked the boxes the best or something like that. So instead of me telling them what they want, it's always better just have a conversation and pick up a little bit more information each time.
All right, so we've got a couple other talking points we want to touch on here.
Okay, you want to get those and I'll come back to the questions later?
Yeah, I can. Well, I can answer one of them. Who pays? I mean, the candidate doesn't pay for any of this stuff. If any recruiter says, I'm going to charge you money to place you in a job, run.
That's not the way to do it.
Right. So we can kind of skip over that. But and you've touched on this a little bit, but what should I do if I get a call from David Burden? What should I do, particularly if I'm not necessarily looking, or I don't have time for this recruiter guy. I'm busy making things happen over here with his magnificent monitors that I have. So what do I say to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's perfectly fine to say I'm not interested in the opportunity. And again, I'm not going to try and talk you into it. I may like to say, hey, could I tell you about it? And maybe there's somebody in your network. But one thing that I would suggest is that if you're in whatever space it is, if computer engineering, and a computer engineering recruiter calls you, even if you have absolutely no intention of leaving your current status, I would just suggest you stay in touch with them. And again, this is just sort of about stewarding your network, stewarding your relationships. And the first time I ever really heard of recruiters was my brother-in-law actually was a recruiter, was a computer engineer, and he got a lot of calls, and he just always, I don't want to do it. I don't want to deal with it. And then his company ended up moving, and they offered to move him for personal reasons. He chose not to. And he had a really, really hard time finding a role that matched up. You wouldn't think so, but spent a couple of years in between opportunities that were really a good match. And so that would just be, hey, Randy, thanks for calling. I'm not interested, but I'd love to stay in touch.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
Really
and so that's what I would say. Just
Yep.
Don't slam the phone down too hard. Just say, could we stay in touch maybe another time?
And I know Teddy would say the same thing. Offer the recruiter maybe some names of people, not necessarily that they're looking, but I can't tell you how many times I've had clients at our professional center say, "Hey, man, I used to get calls all the time from David Burden and guys just like him," and I'm like, "Man, I don't need you. I don't need you." And now that I'm 10 or 15 years older, I don't get no more calls, because they don't have my phone number or whatever. Bottom line is, a recruiter is in the business of making placements. If you have what they want to talk to you. If you're not the guy, they hope you'll give them the guy and refer you. And I say guy figuratively.
Yeah.
But it's a big networking game, and LinkedIn has made it so much easier to identify people based on industry and levels of skill and so forth. So again, a lot has changed. Teddy, I know you had a question or two that you wanted to
Galaxy asked this question.
Yeah.
What are the top 2 or 3 things? If you could, just short bullet point them, Dave, what are the top 2 or 3 things a candidate needs to do when working with a recruiter?
First of all, be completely honest. So, this is.
When did that start?
I know. And
buyers are liars.
Yeah, no surprises. And again, so look, let's just assume worst case scenario. If you've been fired, let's talk about what we've learned from that. That's, I said, I was telling us as we got started off that one of the panelists a little while ago, I think it was Rich Schlez, said, if you've been fired, if you've not been fired, you haven't worked long enough. And I think that's a way of talking through it. But look, let me help you. And the knowledge that I have, the information I have, will be very helpful. And so, look, if you've already, and I'm going to ask you, have you already applied for this role? And if you have, I'm not going to be able to jump you in the line, and that's going to make me look bad, and it's going to make you look bad if I then turn you in and they say, "Oh yeah, we already turned this person down before we even called you." So that just, you'll be totally transparent as to areas you would go, wouldn't go, comp, what you would accept. Again, when I'm a third-party recruiter, my compensation is based on your compensation, so we're aligned there. I know that some people get a little nervous about that question, but if I call and I ask you, "Hey, what's your target compensation?" I just want to make sure that you're in the ballpark of what my client's looking for. So, if you say I'm not moving for anything less than 200,000 and my client's budget is, 150, then that's a non-starter. It really makes me look bad if I get you to the end and then, I wanted this much for comp. Well, no. And so, one of the highest compliments that a client can give me is that I ship what they order. I want to make sure that we've got, the conversation there. So yeah, absolutely be honest. Let us know where you are in the job process. If you're in process somewhere else, all these things are just ways that we don't step on you. So, be in good communication about your status, your opportunity, and also be open for some feedback. If we see your resume or we offer maybe you might want to brush up something on your LinkedIn page. Know that we're doing that because we want you to have the best presentation possible.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Dean dropped in here that he used to call up executive recruiters and recommend that they get in touch with the sales guys who work for his competitors, because he kind of figured if those sales guys are always getting new jobs, he would diminish his competition. Good move, Dean. I like that, Dean. So, Randy, I know when we go to another question.
Yeah, why don't you take another one? Maybe I'll throw one more at him, and then we'll ask
Wrap
David.
up. So here's one more. I got a couple of them out here. I can't get to them all. Um, you know, the virus came, the market got tough, staffing got beat up. Where do you see the market going now, David, for job seekers, i.e. your business? Where do you see it going as we transition, hopefully soon, out of this pandemic?
I mean, for our space, for executive search, we didn't get hit nearly as hard as staffing. And so the economic reports that we're getting coming from our organization overall show that executive search industry was probably, I'm doing this off the top of my head, was about 80%. 2019 was about 80% of what 2018 was. Our office did a little better than that. We were not down at nearly as badly as some sectors in the economy. Obviously, that's very localized. Some parts of nonprofit almost completely shut down, and other parts really had to expand. So what we're seeing is growth. And again, the demand for degreed professionals, we didn't really see a great let up in that. So we're seeing a very strong start in this quarter. And I'm just thinking of, in my firm, we have retail, logistics, food and beverage manufacturing, med device, physician recruiting, and orthotics and prosthetics. And really those desks have picked up a lot even in the last few weeks.
Good. Randy, you got another one?
Well, just the thing about partnering with a recruiter in your search. We've touched on that. If you can kind of put maybe an extra point or two on that. How do I find the right recruiters for me?
So what I would say is, define your space. So define what you're doing, what your industry is, what your role is. And then once we see what that is, then you're going to look for somebody who is a content expert in your field. They may or may not have worked in your field, but they study your field. They are placing in your field. They're having conversations with people in that. And so, if you're an engineer, I hope I was helpful for you today, but I'm probably not going to be the person who's going to get you into your next role. But you're going to not just find an engineering recruiter. You're going to find somebody who places civil engineers with a specialty in concrete, whatever that would be. And so, find who's creating knowledge, find who's, adding value to your process even before you connect with them. And so that's kind of what I said earlier about, what are you doing on LinkedIn, adding knowledge. Look for people that are doing that, not just people that are sort of throwing resumes. And so find somebody who kind of sounds like they know what they're talking about, that they know your field, they know you, and just have a networking conversation with them. And then steward that relationship. That would be the best way to at least open up a relationship with a recruiter.
I'll tell you another way too is talk to your buddies.
Yeah.
Hey, Teddy, you got recruited out of XYZ company. We used to work together. Who was the recruiter? Did they treat you right?
Mm-hmm.
And yep, because word gets around. If you're a stinky one and unethical, then that gets around too.
Word gets around.
But if you're good, it just like recruiters network with their contacts to try to find the Teddy Burrisses of the world, the gold nuggets right there. Now he's in red today, but he's a gold nugget. He really is. Flip the page and say, okay, I need to find a good recruiter. Hey, who helped you? Oh, was it David Burden? Okay, great. Let me reach out to him. So a lot of things, this whole networking relationship stuff is critical. And if you're not a job seeker today, you may be before the end of the year. Who knows? So take the time to be open to having these conversations. We're getting to the point now where we want you, David, if you would, just to kind of summarize a bit. What are some takeaways you'd like folks to have? Take a few minutes, share some thoughts that you want people to walk away with today.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just advise you when you have an opportunity with a recruiter, find a time for a conversation. And if we call you at a bad time, say this is a bad time, but could we have the conversation another time? And I think that'll tell you a lot right there. So if you've got somebody that you just absolutely have to take this career opportunity to this moment, I don't respond well to that type of a sales pitch. And I think if it's a good deal, it's probably going to be a good deal, tomorrow. But hey, let's have this conversation. So if you're not in the place that you need to be connected with a recruiter right now, I would treat connections that you have like that as professional connections. These are people who work in your industry. These are people who are connected to knowledgeable people, throughout your space. And so, really do kind of treat them, as a peer and steward that relationship. And, right now that may be, hey, let's stay in touch. And, oh, by the way, if you ever find, this title or an opportunity in this area because I have family there, I'd like to get back there, let me know. So it may be that. But then if you're in a season in your life where, hey, we really need to intensify this, I need to make a career move, you've already got that network. And so there's no time like the present, wherever you are, just look for relationships that are going to add value, that are going to help you move forward. Understand that a recruiter is paid to find people for jobs and not the other way around. And so that's, one, you don't pay us, but two, that's our role. So I am a part of your networking strategy, and I'm honored if you, help me, if you want me to help you with that. I do, just sometimes when I talk to kind of an overeager candidate, I do just say, look, I'm going to do everything I can, and I'm really excited about this, but please don't hang up the phone and tell your spouse, partner, whatever, that, this is the guy who's going to find me a job. I'm going to help you channel your efforts, but we work together.
Good point. Yeah, you work for the employer, and so your job is not to find a job for Randy Wooden. It is to fill the need, and ideally, you want it to be a win-win because you want repeat business. I mean, you're not stupid, so you're in this for the long haul. Sure. We're at a point now. We've got a few minutes left. It's sort of time to pivot for a story or two, and I usually start out. I always say I don't have a story, and this week I probably don't have a story either. But I'm going to tell you a story anyway. This is the story of how I got into recruiting. True story. I was a radio DJ. They found that I was looking. I had hired a firm to do the kind of work that we do at Goodwill right now, which is essentially private outplacement. So resume, that whole deal. And so I started to look around, and I thought if I could get into recruiting, that would be a great opportunity to have job security versus radio, because finding talent, identifying it, training it, recruiting it, the whole deal, I could have that kind of role regardless of industry and geographic location. It would be a way for me to get into more of a career oriented kind of thing. And so I answered an ad. I had a dot matrix printer. In classified ads. R.E. Lowe Associates in Worthington, Ohio, had placed an ad for a recruiter. So I went in, I interviewed, and they said, I don't think so. What they did was the owner of the company had a brother named Dan Lowe in Pataskala, Ohio. And so they said, well, we can't use him here in Worthington, but maybe Dan, you could use him. So, and again, I was a radio guy. And by this time I was out of a job because they found out I was looking. So here I am, an unemployed radio jock. And it was winter time, I think, or maybe not. But anyway, Dan agreed to interview me on a Sunday afternoon. And he hired me. I sold the transferable skills and a whole deal. And after he hired me, he said, Randy, you have no idea how close I was to just blowing you off. It was a Sunday afternoon. I mean, come on. Why do I want to go into the office to interview a guy? So it was that close. Now, who knows where I would have been had that all those dominoes not fallen as they did. But that got me my start. And these guys had been in the business a very long time. So they taught me a lot of good things. But then over time, I really liked the part of coaching both the company and the candidate. So hopefully they could arrive at a good decision. They could ask good questions and really process this. Like you said, David, I'm not there to steal you and put you somewhere as though you're some blind, thing I can just take and put over here. But so I like that the coaching aspect, and that's ultimately what led me down the path I'm on now and really enjoy. So that's a story, true story of how I got started in this business. And Teddy, take it from here and then throw it back to me and we'll talk about
the story about the PO and you were told to do it. That's not true.
No, but that's how it all went down, man. It was a long time. That was 1992. It was 1992.
Yeah.
It was a great,
good year.
It was a very good year.
Hey, Randy, before you introduce our next guest for next week, which we're really excited to have, I'll tell you some thoughts that came out of our conversation. David, thank you very much for sharing with us today. And thank you everybody who engaged and, asked questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them. Look, a recruiter is a resource. I don't care if they're a contingent. I don't care if they're retained. I don't care if they're executive search. They're resources. And in your job search, you are responsible to find all the different resources that can help you in your journey. And and I don't know if David knows this number, and Randy and I, we may not agree on the number, but some number to the extent of 60, 70, 80% of the jobs are not listed on any job board. Some number in that space, huge number of all the job openings are not listed. But a lot of the recruiters know, especially executive and retained, because they don't publish, for the most part, they don't publish those hidden job openings. So it's your responsibility as a job seeker to align yourself with the resources that can help you in your journey, in your specific industry, in the specific regions, and most importantly, the types of roles that you are looking for. So if you're just calling the same recruiter over and over again and beating them up and hoping and praying they have a job for you, you're making a huge mistake. Connect with other recruiters. Maybe don't send them a LinkedIn invite, but connect with them via telephone, via email, and strike up a conversation, because at the end of the day, it all comes through a conversation. Randy, back to you, buddy.
Yeah, it really does. Recruiters are not just robots. They deal with people, and they're in the people business. So to the extent that you can be front of mind with David, or have had enough conversation where he knows, likes, and trusts you, I think that goes a long way when it comes to his job of selling or persuading the employer to at least take a look at you. And unless you can't hit a home run until you get to home plate with a bat in your hand. So
I read on this website somewhere on the internet that the dude who made the Tesla is developing robotic recruiters. I don't know how true that is, but just something I read,
Yeah, and I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I do know that there more and more artificial intelligence is really impacting the recruiting onboarding process. In fact, thanks for the segue, Teddy. I'm sure you did that on purpose. Next week, March 3rd, Cindy Martin returns to our show here, Lunch with Randy and Teddy. Cindy is an etiquette consultant, professionalism, and that's what she talked about last time, and we'll touch on some of that too as well. But as we go through the interview process, more and more now, instead of me sitting face to face with somebody and heaven forbid shaking a hand, now we're seeing more online. You like that, Teddy?
No, it's making me sick. Stop it.
That's my special effects right there. See, that didn't cost a thing. But anyway, we're dealing more now with virtual interviews, point being. And so her topic next week will be dealing more with the etiquette and the protocol, the do's and don'ts surrounding virtual interviewing, and also artificial intelligence, because in some cases, we're also seeing interviews taking place without there being another person on the other side of that camera looking at you. You are speaking to artificial intelligence, and they're analyzing eye movements nostrils, facial expressions, the whole thing, tone of voice. What are some tips that you can gather to help you, I'll say, ace the interview when there's no interviewer that you can reach out and at least say hello to? So lots going on behind the scenes. That's coming up next week. And don't forget our April 7th show, anniversary show. We've got a whole bunch of folks coming back. And I think we're going to go 90 minutes if they can stand us.
We are. Yeah, 90 minutes on the 7th.
We'll do that.
David, again, thanks a lot for coming, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yep. We're out of time today. Thank you, David. Thank you, Teddy. You guys have a great week and be safe. Thanks again.
Bye, everybody.